Hello, I'm Derek Walker. I'm the pastor of the Oxford Bible Church. And in this series, we've been considering the claims of creation versus evolution. And the world constantly tells us, doesn't it, that evolution is science, whereas the Genesis account of creation is not scientific. My aim is to show you now that actually the exact reverse is true. Earlier in the series, we've seen that evolution is not good science, actually. But now we're going to look at the other side of the issue. We'll begin to do that today. We're going to consider if the Bible's account of creation makes scientific sense. Does modern science confirm or deny the Bible's account? That's the issue before us now. And first we're going to look at the fundamental issue, what I call the cosmological issue of the original creation of the universe. How do we explain the fact of the existence of the universe? And the Bible's explanation is given in the very first verse of the Bible, Genesis 1:1. This majestic verse, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And this claims that this universe of time and matter and space had a beginning. Originally, there was no universe, nothing, only God. Since he existed before time even began, time began in the beginning. In the beginning, God. God already was there in the beginning when time began. And so God must live outside time. He must therefore be uncreated, eternal. And that's why he revealed his name, Yahweh, which means I am. I am that I am. And then, by choice, God brought this universe into existence from nothing. Ex nihilo in Latin. Out of nothing. There was nothing, and then God brought forth the universe. The Bible consistently claims that God created this universe from nothing by an act of his will. Revelation 4:11 says, "You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will, or for your pleasure, by your will, they exist and were created." He called the universe into existence by his word. Romans 4:17 says that God calls those things into existence that be not as though they were. He said, "Universe, be," and it was. Hebrews 11:3 says, "By faith we understand that the worlds, the ages, the universe were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which are visible." From nothing, God created the universe. He didn't use any pre-existing material. He made it out of nothing. He spoke it into existence. Before the universe, there was no physical realm. Psalm 33:6 says, "By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and all the host of them by the breath or the spirit of his mouth. For he spoke and it was done. He commanded and it stood fast." Today I want to show you how modern science has actually confirmed this fundamental claim of the Bible, that the universe has not always existed, but suddenly came into existence out of nothing. That's a staggering fact, actually, that's been proved recently in the last 20 or 30 years. The Bible has been found scientifically accurate in its first primary claim. Now, if that happened, if the universe suddenly came out of nothing, someone must have caused it. Somebody must have willed it into existence. And this one, the first cause of all things, must himself be outside time and space, and therefore be uncreated, eternal. In other words, God. Since the universe suddenly came out of nothing, it follows there must be a creator God who brought it into existence. Well, we're going to develop that thought. The alternative to that thought, now that we know that the universe had a beginning, therefore that God, there must be a God who brought it into being. The alternative explanation is described quite well by Alan Guth. He said, "The universe burst into existence from absolutely nothing, zero, nada, and it became bigger. As it became bigger, it became filled with even more stuff that came from absolutely nowhere." And they accuse us of believing in miracles. Well, creation, on the other hand, provides a rational explanation. God is a sufficient cause to explain the universe. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Compare that to the alternative statement, which is irrational, really. In the beginning there was nothing, and it exploded. In other words, it makes no sense to say there was nothingness and then suddenly the universe appeared and nothing caused it. That's nonsense. So Genesis 1:1 makes perfect sense, and it totally agrees with modern science, which says the universe had a beginning. And that's what it says, and it also says that it was God who caused it to come into being. That's perfect logic. But let's appreciate the significance of this discovery of modern science a bit more that confirms the truth of Genesis 1:1. Let's just consider the two alternatives, really, for the existence of the universe. Either, number one, the universe just exists, all right? It always has existed, and it always will exist. In a sense, the universe is eternal. Now, you might, that was one belief, a major belief that many believed. The universe has always existed, so therefore it didn't need to be created because it always just existed. Or the alternative is that the universe had a beginning at some point in the past when it came into existence. Before that was nothing. Time, space, and matter came into being out of nothing. So, if that's true, then someone must have caused it to come into being. Someone who's beyond time, space, and matter. That one who caused it, that implies it was an act of will, so it must be a person. And since he created space, he must be transcendent, not limited by space. Since he created matter, he must be spirit. Since he created energy, he must be powerful. Since he created time, he must be outside time, and therefore he must be eternal. As the eternal one, he must be the uncaused, self-existent I am. And this is all consistent with what we know from science. So, if the universe had a beginning, it must have a creator, an eternal creator. Whereas, on the other hand, if the universe has always existed, then this issue is not so clear, whether there's a God or not. It's more of an arguable issue. And that's the reason why for so long, scientists and philosophers, many of them, preferred to believe that the universe always existed. Otherwise, they would be forced to believe in God. So, these are two issues. Either the universe is finite in time with a beginning, or it's infinite in time, it's always existed. And the jury was out on this until quite recently. This issue is a clear-cut issue that should be testable by science. Does the universe have a beginning or not? Well, Genesis is clear. It does predict the universe had a beginning, and of course that requires a creator. Does science confirm or deny it? That's the issue. Now, down history, the Hebrews, of course, following Genesis, believed in a universe that had a beginning, that was created by God. On the other hand, all the ancient Greek philosophers and the secular scientists, until quite recently, assumed that the universe always existed. They rejected the universe having a beginning because of the implications that there would have to be a God. And so what they proposed was an infinitely old universe. Either a steady state universe where basically everything stays static forever and ever and ever, or an oscillating universe that it kind of expands and then contracts and then expands, contracts eternally. Those were the two options. Now actually, if you think about this eternal universe that's always existed, infinitely back into the past, that you could go back in time in a time machine and there would be no way you could go back forever and ever and ever and ever, that has a problem to it if you think about it, because if the past was infinite in time, how did we get to the present moment? Think about it. It's impossible. But they still held to that view because the alternative was to believe in a creator. Well, until recently, science couldn't prove which was right, which was wrong. But now the issue is settled. Modern cosmology has established beyond any doubt that the universe had a beginning. This is an amazing truth that we need to get a hold of in our witnessing as well. Now, this was established through two observable laws of science. The first one is the laws of thermodynamics, especially concerning entropy. And that basically tells us that all things tend towards disorder. In other words, the universe is gradually running down to a heat death. You know, just like your house, if you never tidy it up, if you never put in new information, the tendency is for it to become more and more disordered. And it's the same from the universe. Without any influx of order from the outside, and if the universe is everything there is, there can't be anything new coming in. Without that coming in, the universe in a finite time will become gradually a totally disordered wasteland, close to absolute zero. And so, if you think about it, if the universe has always existed for an infinite time, by now the whole thing would have become total chaos and nothingness. There'd be nothing left. So the laws of thermodynamics tell us that the age of the universe must be finite. It must have had a beginning. And those same laws also tell us, by the way, that this oscillating universe is impossible, because once it collapses, it wouldn't be able to rebound. Well, that's that one. But the real final convincer came from the observations of the expanding universe, combined with Einstein's theory of relativity. You see, the astronomer Hubble, after whom we name the Hubble telescope, as he observed the universe, and he looked in all directions and measured the red shifts, he was able to show that the universe is expanding. Actually, the fabric of the universe has been expanding. That was a surprise to many, including Einstein, who assumed that the universe was this static universe that stayed the same forever. Well, this actually was another amazing confirmation of the Bible. Because again and again in the Bible, we are told that God stretched out the heavens. That's an amazing statement. God stretched out the heavens. And so the Bible predicts that when we look at the universe, as we look back towards early times, of course, then we should see that the heavens are being stretched out. It's exactly what we see in the red shifts. And I'm going to give you the scriptures for that so you can look them up, because they are tremendous evidence, scientific evidence for the Bible. Psalm 104, verse 2. And then Isaiah 42, verse 5. Isaiah 44, 24. Isaiah 45, verse 12. Isaiah 48, verse 13. And Isaiah 51, verse 13. Jeremiah says it as well. Jeremiah 10, verse 12. Jeremiah 51, verse 15. And finally, Zechariah chapter 12, verse 1. God stretched out the heavens. That means, you see, that in the past the universe must have been much smaller. Now, here's the interesting thing, that from Einstein's theory of relativity, which has been well established now, when you put the expansion, you see, when you have mathematical equations, there are many different solutions to them depending on your starting conditions and so on, and other conditions that control the solution. So you don't just need the equations, you need certain things that you know are true, that you put into the equation and then you get the solution. Well, when you put the facts about this universe, such as the expansion, into the equations of relativity, you find out this, that the universe had a beginning. And Penrose and Hawking are famous for producing the paper that show that the general relativity shows absolutely clearly that the universe had a beginning. This stunned the world, the scientific world at the time. Many people were led to believe in God there, you see, because if the universe had a beginning, there must be a God. It's quite logical. And this was a big shock, because many people were still holding on to the steady-state universe, to a universe that had no beginning. And so this is important that we get a hold of this. Science has shown now. Now, I want you to hear me very carefully now. The favored solution right now of the equations of relativity is the Big Bang. Where, and you get, this is a solution of the equations, where if you rewind the universe backwards in time and just keep going, as it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, you get to when the whole universe was just a point, or a singularity. This is the beginning of time. And in this model, the whole universe came into existence from a point, from a singularity, which then rapidly expanded. That's why it's called, it's like an expanding balloon. And that's what they mean by the Big Bang. And this Big Bang received extra confirmation of the background radiation universally that it predicted, and that was measured by George Gamow, 4 Kelvin background radiation. So everyone was totally impressed by that. Now, young Earth creationists don't like the Big Bang because it requires an old universe of billions of years. Now, if that's you, don't panic, because I'm not speaking to the issue of how old the universe is, all right? That's not what I'm talking about something more fundamental here. Now, the main point I'm talking about here is not how old the universe is, but it's the fact that the universe had a beginning, all right? Now, what I want you to see is that science has shown that the universe definitely had a beginning. Whether it's thousands of years, millions, billions, that's not the issue. The point is the theory of relativity, with the expansion of the universe, proves that the universe had to have a beginning. Now, there are other solutions that are possible, as well as the Big Bang, depending on the starting conditions that God set, and only God knows those conditions. For example, he didn't have to start it from a singularity, did he? He may well have started it with a definite size. Obviously not as big as it is now, but some definite size, you know. And then, over creation week, he stretched out the heavens and made it larger, and stretched the heavens to their present size. In fact, there's some tremendous young Earth creation scientists, Russell Humphreys, John Harnett. They've developed alternative models to the Big Bang, based on relativity again, based on different starting points. And these also predict that background radiation, so they're looking good too. But the main point is this, that all the solutions of the equations of general relativity by Einstein applied to this expanding universe undeniably require that it had a beginning. And that is absolutely settled in scientific circles. And since the universe had a beginning, there must be someone who caused it to begin, namely God. Let me show you this logic, because the logic is very clear. The first point is this: whatever begins to exist must have a cause. Isn't that true? All the philosophers have always accepted that. If there was nothing and then suddenly begins to exist, something must have caused it, you see. So if there was total nothingness and then the universe came into being, something must have caused that. It makes no sense otherwise. Now, some people talk about, there's empty space, and things such as virtual particles are apparently popping in and out of existence out of empty space. And so saying, maybe it's like that. The universe just kind of randomly popped as a quantum fluctuation into existence. Now, that's actually nonsense, because if it popped into existence like that, it would disappear just as quickly. But more importantly, empty space actually isn't nothingness. It's actually an energy field full of these quantum fluctuations. It's not nothingness, it's something where energy exists and creates these bubbling particles. But we're talking about, before the universe exists, is literal nothingness. not an energy field, nothing. And then suddenly the universe appears. Something must have caused that. And the second point is, now science has told us that the universe had a beginning. Let's put those together. Whatever begins to exist must have a cause. And the universe had a beginning. It began to exist. Therefore, the logic is clear. The universe must have had a cause outside itself. There must therefore be a God. This is what science and logic tell us, you see. And so the account of creation, given in Genesis 1, which claims to be an eyewitness account by the one person who was there, that's God. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, gives a clear, logical explanation for the universe that is totally consistent with modern science. So those who say Genesis isn't scientific, I have to disagree with you. Let's look at Genesis 1:1, just a few more minutes. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. What does that say about God? Well, it's interesting. The word God there is Elohim, which is a plural word, which hints that there is plurality in the Godhead, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But when it says created, that's singular. So it's the three in one God, the Trinity we see there. In the beginning, God. It says he existed before time and space existed. And so he's outside time and space. He's the eternal one. And he's the one that caused all things. He's the creator of all things. In the beginning, God created all things. You know, that makes much more sense than saying, in the beginning, nothing created everything. That doesn't make sense, does it? No, in the beginning, God created all things. What does it say about the universe? In the beginning, before time, it says. That's a reference to time, isn't it? In the beginning. That's the creation of time. God created the heavens. That's the creation of space. And the earth. That's the creation of matter, you see. And so the Bible describes the universe as consisting of three distinct essential things: time, space, and matter. That's exactly in agreement with modern science, particularly the theory of relativity. It says the universe came into existence from nothing by the will of God. And it describes the universe as being a space-time-matter continuum, a triune universe created by a triune God. You see, there are three fundamental things: space, time, and matter. By the energy, relativity tells us that energy and matter are two forms of the same thing. So there are three fundamentals that are intertwined in the universe. You can't separate them. This statement was well ahead of its time. In fact, only since Einstein's theories of relativity has modern science caught up to Genesis 1:1, because that's what Einstein discovered. Before that, everyone thought of those three things as kind of separate things. Einstein says, no, they all form one continuum. First, Einstein's special theory of relativity integrated space and time together, so that now people talk about space-time, don't they? The space-time continuum. That's Einstein, you see. But before Einstein, it was in Genesis 1:1. And then his general theory of relativity, a bit later, integrated matter together with space-time to describe the structure of the universe through gravity as a unified space-time-matter continuum. And he actually got it to where Genesis 1:1 was, or before, that the universe was this triune universe, space, time, and matter. Praise God. The Bible is scientifically accurate. And if it's true in its fundamental assertion in Genesis 1:1, perhaps we should take it seriously in other things that it says as well. Now, other verses describe more about how the triune God did it. He did it through the word of his power. John 1:1 says, in the beginning was the Word, that's Jesus, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And here we see Jesus, the Son of God. It says he was with God, face to face with God, equal. He's the second person of the Godhead, face to face, the equal of the Father. And he himself was God. He was in the beginning with God. And all things were made through him. Without him, nothing was made that was made. And so here we see God, the Father, and the Son were working together in creation. And the Son is described as the Word of the Father. That is the perfect image, the perfect representation, the perfect expression and revelation of the Father. And it says that the Father created through the Son, just as the speaker of a word works through his word. I'm the speaker of these words, but I'm working through my words. So God worked through his word, the Son. God initiated. God spoke the word, and the word went forth, who is Jesus, and created the world. And also, when I speak my word, my breath goes with the word, which is the word for the Spirit. My spirit goes with my word. And so God spoke, and the Word created the world in the power of the Spirit, because the Word and the Spirit went forth together. That's in Psalm 33:6. It says, "By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth, by the Spirit of his mouth." Colossians 1:16 and 17 says that through Christ all things were made. Hebrews 1:1 says the same, that through Christ he made the whole world. And the same universe that had a beginning has an end. We need to be ready for that end.